Hello, Sarah of SEK Handmade here, and I am so excited to be back with you today with another Meet the Maker interview. You guys, we have just the best community here in the fiber arts world, and I have been blessed to talk with many people, and I am just, I'll be real honest with you, feeling a little lucky today, super thrilled to be getting to know Sandra Gutierrez of Nomad Stitches today. She is someone that I have followed for a while. If you are not following her, you are missing out. She has the most gorgeous designs and she's extremely talented. And so I'm so excited to chat with her today for all the selfish reasons, but also to bring her to you so that you can get to know her better, because you are definitely going to want to check out all of her things. So let's welcome Sandra. Hello.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you
How
so
are
much
you
for
doing
having
today?
me.
Oh, my pleasure. How are you doing today?
Good, good. It's been a very nice day. It's like my day off where I get to be with the girls today because my husband and I kind of switch, work and girls, and yeah, it was really nice. We did a lot of crafts, so I
Oh,
feel very crafty today, and it's yeah, it's been a good day.
I love it. I love it. How's the weather by you?
It's been surprisingly amazing. Like I live in England, and I feel like as soon as you say that, you expect the worst. But it's been really, really nice and sunny, and it rained today, which was nice because it like calmed down the heat. I mean, it's not that hot for me. I'm from Mexico. Like this is just quite lovely, but people are freaking out. But it was nice to have rain, and then we've got sun now, which is insane. Like that's just so not typical of here. So I'm very, very pleased.
I love it. That's awesome. We are like starting to feel the slow shift into fall.
Yeah. I'm
Mornings are
pushing
chilly.
against it. I'm not. I mean, I like fall, but I'm terrified of winter. To be honest, especially long winters, like in England, like because they start around September and you don't finish until like March, basically. So it's like I'm really, really trying to soak up as much of the sun as possible. Like I just came back from a holiday in Mexico in July, and after 2 months there, I went back to being brown. And like after 2 months back, I'm like, oh, it's going away already. But yeah, that's the reality.
Yep. Definitely a different climate in Mexico and England.
Yeah, very different.
Will you get snow in September in England?
No, definitely not. Like we get some, like last year we didn't get any snow at all, and the year before that we got like the tiniest bit of snow, like just kind of fluffy, snow. But yeah, no, it's not like that. We lived in Bulgaria before, and over there the winters were insane. Like we had, like 2 meters of snow. Like I don't know how many feet that is, but like just like you're buried up to the waist in snow at times, and like yeah, you couldn't open the doors, and yeah, it was very, very intense. But no, not here.
That sounds incredibly intense. I'm
Yeah.
from Wisconsin, which is like northern Midwest. Like I could drive to Canada if I wanted
Okay.
to. And we get quite a bit of snow, but that's intense even for where I'm from. So that's a
Yeah.
lot of snow.
Yeah, yeah, it was pretty shocking, to be honest. We did 2 winters there, and yeah, that was enough for us.
I love it. I love it. Um, I would love to know more just about yourself generally. From following you, I've gathered a little bit that you have traveled quite a bit and lived in lots of different places, but I just love for you to share anything you want to share about yourself, your travels, where you grew up, your family, hobbies, whatever you want to share.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm originally from Mexico. I haven't lived like formally there since I was 18 years old. I went to university in the United States, and then after that, I did a study abroad program in Argentina, and that was like my first taste of like actual international living. Because where I live in Mexico is very, very close to the border with San Diego. So like we would go shopping in San Diego. It was kind of like going to university in San Diego didn't feel like that far away. Like I would still go home every 2 weeks, and it was familiar and normal. But when I lived in Argentina, it was like completely like different lifestyle, and I loved it. And then I couldn't stop, to be honest. Like after that, I graduated and I went to Taiwan and then China, Greece, Spain, Italy, like you name it. I've probably lived there. And yeah, and I've just been traveling around for a while. And now that I'm married and I have kids, it's a little bit harder. So we've been in England for, I think, 2 years. It was at the end of July. And that's not the longest we've been anywhere, but it's close to the longest we've been anywhere. And we're thinking about moving, and now it's just like, it's terrifying because before, you put everything that fits in your backpack and then you just go. And that's it. Literally, like, I am not kidding. Like, that would be everything I owned in the world, what would fit in my backpack for so many years. And then we upgraded to a car, and everything that fit in a car, that was it. And now it's like, well, we have kids, like literally, and 2 dogs. So that's all that fits in the car. We can't put all of our stuff. So yeah, it's
and kids come with a lot of stuff.
Oh my God, I know. It's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. I was just telling you, I went on this holiday and like just traveling for 2 months with 2 kids was intense. Like the huge suitcases we took and the little tiny suitcases just like for the trip, it's like, okay, this one's full of snacks, this one's full of notebooks, this one's full of colors, like, just because you need to get through the 12 hours of flights. And I think it was 35 hours from door to door at the end. So yeah, that was intense. But yeah, so Mexico is my home, but I haven't lived there in a very, very long time. But I still talk to my parents and go whenever I can. And it's part of who I am, right? It's home. Yeah. My passport still says I'm Mexican at least, so that's good. But yeah, and I don't know, I studied psychology in university and I ended up doing this, so don't ask me how.
I was going to say, like, all of that, to me, one of the big, so I'm about the opposite of you. I have done very little travel and even less international travel. So I love the idea of just packing up your backpack and picking up and moving, but I am such a routine person that I know that would drive me insane. But I love the idea of it. So, but to me, I think, oh my gosh, like, what do you do for a job when you move that frequently? Were you designing? And so when you're a crochet designer, you can really do that from anywhere.
Yeah, I could. But no, I actually started doing it because I was an English teacher. So I started teaching like a kindergarten with like little tiny kids in Taiwan, and that was really, really fun. And then every time from there, I just went somewhere where they would give me a job. So I went to China for a year to work as a teacher. I went to the south of Mexico, actually, to a tiny, tiny little town. That's where I met my husband. And I was also a teacher at a university. And all these places, they're just like, they're schools that are willing to give me a job. And sometimes it comes with accommodation, sometimes it doesn't. But, you just kind of figure it out. Taiwan actually was my first experience teaching abroad, and I had no experience, no qualifications whatsoever. I mean, I did do like a very sad course for teaching ESL, but it supposedly prepared me for it, but I had no idea what I was up for. I wasn't even legally allowed to work in this country, and I just moved there because my friends were going, so I'm like, why not? Let's just all go. And I didn't even research that I couldn't work there legally because I'm Mexican. So I just, yeah. So I was on like a tourist visa and I had to leave the country. I mean, I probably shouldn't be sharing this in public. I don't know. But, I had to leave the country like every 6 months because like my visa would expire and I had to like re-get a visa, and like they would train us as to like where to hide in case someone came to check on them, because like the school would get in trouble for hiring us. I mean, it was pretty intense and mental. And I rode a motorcycle everywhere, and I have loads of scars all over my body from that time. Like it was crazy. I can't believe my parents were okay. I mean, they weren't okay with me leaving, but I feel like they would have done more to stop me, or like at least question me a little bit more about it. But yeah, after that, I kind of learned a lesson, and like I did it a bit more, set up for me. Like I had a job, I had a house, I had something to go to before I went to the next country. And then Spain was just easier because we moved there, and my husband had a job, so then I found a job, and then we just kind of did that finding jobs thing. But yeah, that was what I did. And then I started doing it online. So once I started, doing it, like this, it was just so much easier to move. So I did, for example, 3 months in Italy where we did like a month in every different place, or like 2 weeks sometimes in a place, and we would just be on our computers like 6 hours a day, which wasn't great, but we would literally wake up at like 6 in the morning and then be done in the afternoon, and then we had the rest of the day to just like chill at the beach or whatever. And we made sure we worked only like 4 days a week, and yeah, it was a really fun experience. We had no money, but it was enough to survive. And yeah, that's how we did it. And then once I started designing, I didn't see it as a proper successful business until I had my first baby. And I couldn't work online because I couldn't teach online because I had her, so I couldn't do that. And so I kind of took designing a bit more seriously. And then the pandemic hit, and that was, as terrible as it was for the world, it turned out to be really, really good for me because people started crocheting more and knitting more, and then they started buying my patterns more, and then I got more attention, and then I suddenly realized I can make ends meet doing this thing that I love. I don't need to go back to teaching online, so I haven't done it since then, and yeah, it's been pretty cool.
That's awesome. So is your husband also a teacher then?
He did it for a very long time, yeah. But when we came here to England, we decided that because he really didn't like it anymore. Like, it's after a while, it's quite soul destroying to like just kind of be on a computer all day talking to people, and like the kind of conversations you can have are just very limited, and it's just very repetitive, and it's very, very soul destroying after a while to do that job. I mean, it's great, but it's also very difficult. So he's like, I really don't like what I'm doing, and we have our daughter, and I was doing this that I could make enough money for us to live. So I figured, why don't you take a break and you take care of Maggie while I do this. And then I got the offer for writing the book as well. So I was like, I'm going to be very busy. Why don't you take over the house and Maggie? And then he became like the stay-at-home dad, and I work from home, but I'm the one who's working. And now I've actually brought him into the business, so he takes care of like all the marketing and ads and all of that side of things, and the legal stuff that I really don't. I'm really bad at it. And so like he's helping me out with that while I have more time with the girls, and I get to be more involved, because it started feeling a little bit like I could hear them like having fun and playing, and I'd be like, I'm here in my office, on the computer all day. So yeah, so now I feel like there's a bit more of a balance where he also gets something fulfilling and fun and interesting for him, because he loves this kind of stuff, and I get to play and do crafts during the day.
That is so special that you have found such a great balance that works so well for your family. What a gift.
Yeah.
And like you said, that opens up the ability then to start traveling again, right?
Yeah.
Because you can both do your job from anywhere again.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, the plan at the moment is to move to Spain, but like I told you, with the kids, it's like, it's not that easy. You can't just go somewhere and figure out a home. It's like you kind of have to figure this stuff ahead of time. And, we went on this holiday to Mexico, and the idea was like, well, we'll just come back and then pack everything up, and like within 2 weeks we'll be in Spain. And it's like, no, that's not possible. Like, we have all this stuff. Like, it's just, we really need to plan it, because it's not just us, right? It's our girls that would be very uncomfortable. Like, their routine would be completely messed up, and we just didn't want to put them through that. So now we're kind of taking our time and doing it slowly. But yes, that is a plan to move somewhere soon. But I don't know where now. We'll see.
I love it. I love it. So did your husband grow up in Mexico too? I know you said you met there.
No, he's actually from England. That's why kind of we're here. Yeah, he was from very, very close to here where we live. His mom lives about 45 minutes from us, which is where he grew up. And he's also like a nomad soul, let's call it. Like, he left when he was 18 or 17 or something like that, and he's traveled all through like Australia, New Zealand. He went to Central America, and then amongst his travels, he ended up at this job in the south of Mexico, where I happened to be after having been in Taiwan for a while in Asia. And yeah, and then we met, and that was it. The rest is history, like they say.
it sounds like you're great for each other, that you both have the same kind of spirit, and so you can move in the same way. That's really great.
Yeah, we're a bit bad for each other in that way, that neither of us, we're always like, oh, the grass is always greener kind of people, you know, and it's very hard to settle.
That's okay though. Settling's not for everyone. I feel like,
True.
you know, society tells us like, oh, settle down, buy the house, get, you know, be reliable in the job that's always the same thing. And I mean,
Yeah.
let's be honest, you say crochet designer and people are like, you what?
You what?
You what?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
that's a thing. Like they can't
Yeah.
picture, you know, you say teacher and people think, oh, I know what a teacher does.
Yeah,
But you say
yeah.
crochet designer and people are like, how do you make money doing that?
Yeah.
But
Definitely.
that's not everybody needs to live that way. And honestly, I think with more jobs being virtual, more people are living and have the ability to follow their
Have
passion
the
and live that
ability,
kind of nomadic
exactly.
lifestyle, which is awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is fun.
I love it. That's wonderful. So why don't you tell me a little bit about how you learned, you crochet and knit, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Yeah,
don't you tell
yeah.
me a little bit about how you got crafting, who taught you, how old you were, and how
Yeah.
then like did that turn into a business for you?
Well, it's a funny story because my mom, when I, every time, you know, growing up, I just remember her sewing us clothes and knitting things and crocheting things, and just like she was always quite crafty. But she was also a full-time worker, so it was one of those things, like she was just always busy. And like, and now that I'm an adult and I do this, like in my head, because she always did it, I feel like I assumed that I always did it too. And I honestly had no memory of learning to crochet or knit. And I just assumed I learned when I was a little girl, and that was something that I just knew how to do. And this time I went home to see my parents and we were talking about it. And I was like, isn't that funny? That's something that you taught me when I was little. Now I've made a career out of. And she's like, what are you talking about? I told you when you were like 22. And I was like, what? No, I was not. I wasn't 22, but I was in college. And I think I was like 18, 19 years old. And I had gone home for the summer. And yeah, my mom says that I was like, Mom, why haven't you ever taught me? And she's like, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to learn? And I was like, yeah. And literally in one weekend, I learned how to both knit and crochet. And then I just took on to, like, I couldn't stop and I went crazy. And I do, after she said it, I was like, oh my God, yes. Like these memories just started coming back to me. I was like, I remember going crazy. And this is why when I started translating my patterns to Spanish, because I'm bilingual, it just, Spanish felt like a foreign language when it came to knitting and crochet, because I have never learned anything in that language, because my mom taught me the basics, but I don't even know if she taught me the names for things. So she just taught me how to do things, and then I just learned everything from YouTube. But I didn't know, like, you know, in my head, it's like one of those things that, like, like the information just happened to be there, you know? But anyway, yeah, I learned in college and I went crazy. And I didn't even know that Ravelry existed. I didn't know that there were actual patterns out there. Like, I just assumed people did things. Like, it didn't seem to me weird to me to learn a technique and then just incorporate it into something. So, like, I made all these, like, really complicated cabled hats and crochet, like, bikinis and just like all the stuff that I just kind of played with stitches and created things out of. And it seemed very normal to me. And my mom was like, oh my God, like you made that. And I was like, yeah, but like not a big deal, you know? And then eventually I was like, oh, like people actually follow what other people tell them to do. That's cool. I didn't know that was a possibility. You know? And then I started buying patterns, but you know, it took me a while to get there, which is cool because it kind of made this what I do now much easier, because I kind of did it backwards. You know, I learned by myself and by looking at things. Like I was very good at just like looking at a picture and being like, how they make that? And then I'll be like, blah, 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 like this, and I would figure it out. And you know, so I kind of worked backwards in my learning. But yeah, in Spanish, tejer, the verb, is to knit and to crochet. Like you knit with two needles or you knit with a crochet hook. It's the same verb. So in my head, they kind of go together. You know what I mean? Like it's just, they're kind of interchangeable. And yeah, that's just how I've always done it. And And how I started, a friend of mine, when I was in Valencia in Spain, a friend of mine saw a bikini that I had done, a bikini top, and she was like, "Oh my God, you have to sell those!" Like, I remember one time I bought one and I just loved it. Like, you have to sell them, and I was like, "That is ridiculous," but maybe I should. So I literally started making things, and I would set up on the street with all the hippies selling, like, artisan crafts and earrings and stuff. And I would set up there with like my crochet bikinis. I started making like little tiny baby booties and earrings and all this stuff, And I remember the first time I sold like more than one thing and I made 80 euros in a day. I was like, oh my God, like it's amazing. Because I would make no money. I mean, I would spend all day sitting out there in between, work and stuff, like all Saturdays, or I would go to the beach and walk along the whole beach selling stuff. And obviously no one buys that stuff. I mean, some people do, which I hope if you're doing it right now, or someone who's listening, I hope you're doing well, because I didn't do well. But yeah, and then I started doing it, and what happened? Oh, I hurt my back. I have an issue with my back, and I had moved already to Granada by then, and I have a dislocated disc that just acted up, and I was literally in bed for 2 weeks without being able to move, without being able to go anywhere, and I think it's one of those like really horrible things that turned into a good thing, because like I was in bed, I couldn't do anything, so I just started like making all these different kinds of things, and then writing a pattern for it, because I realized that no one had something like what I was doing. And I was like, maybe there is a place in this design world for what I have to offer. And I wrote my first pattern, and I remember testing it, and it was horrendous. The girl that helped me go through it, I was like, oh, I still love her so much, because she helped me so much to like figure out how to word things and how to organize my thoughts into paper. But yeah, I still sell that top, and it still sells pretty well because it's actually quite a good pattern. But yeah, and then I just didn't stop. Like, that was my first one, and then from then on I just kept going. I went back to all the designs that I had created while I was selling things, and just kind of wrote patterns to those, and then I just kept going, and that's that.
I love it. That's wonderful. Oh gosh, yes. How many times have we had things in our lives that at the point seemed like something really terrible, but ended up being a shift that I mean, totally changed our lives. If that hadn't
Yeah.
happened and you hadn't started writing, how different things would be for you now.
I know. And that girl that told me to sell my stuff, like, she was dating my friend, our one of our best friends, and like now she's not part of my life at all. But I always think of her, like, as in like, thank you, Chris, for dating her, because she got me to do this, which is so random but lovely.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. Um, it's definitely a special skill being able to just have a vision of something and
Mm,
then turn yarn into that. I think a lot of times as designers, we think like, I mean, it's not a big deal, but there's, like with all things, everybody's brain works a little differently, and there are tons of people who just they can see things and they can have extensive knowledge of the craft, but their brain just doesn't work to like take that and turn it into a
yeah,
pattern. But
yeah.
then it's also a whole nother learning curve to be able to make something with the yarn and then explain it to other people.
Yep. I've learned that the hard way.
I think we all did. I mean, my first pattern, I had it tested and it works. Lots of people have made it, but same kind of thing. I'm like, whew, that was scary, and I really felt like I had no idea what I was doing. But with
Yeah,
everything, right? You start with not knowing and not having practice. You never start anything as an expert, and
yeah.
so the way you do it is by doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like back in the day, like, well, not back in the day, this sounds like it was 30 years ago. It wasn't that long ago, but like, the information out there was limited in the sense that people weren't writing about it. Like, they taught you techniques and stuff, but you didn't really know the process of how to go from an idea to an actual design, and like it took me a lot of research to kind of integrate all of this knowledge and make something out of it, and yeah, it's been a huge learning curve, but I am so glad I went through on this path for sure.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but when I first started, I worked from a lot of books, and
Mm-hmm.
so the idea of designing myself never really crossed my mind, because I thought like you had to publish a book, and
Mm-hmm.
like that's a whole nother
Other level, yeah, no,
level, yeah,
definitely.
than to publishing one pattern at a time. And so
Yeah.
yeah, you're right that
Yeah, no,
when I
like I
started.
had no idea that this was a possibility. Like, it was one of those things that I was like, oh my God, like you can just do that. You can just say, here, buy this. I made it. And people do if they like it. I was like, wow, that's so cool. Again, I thought like you needed like a yarn company to sponsor you, or, someone to desire to publish this for you, like I thought it was a much more complicated process because, yeah, no, it was nice.
Yeah, yeah, it's so cool. I mean, I really think um the internet in general, but for the whole world, has really opened things up
Yeah.
um past like when, I don't know, the big publishing companies are in charge of um who gets to publish patterns and what patterns get published. Their goal obviously is a business to sell things. And so
Hmm.
they want to focus on the things that they think are going to make them the most profit.
Yeah.
And their perception is limited, right? What they think will sell and what they think is popular. A lot of times it's a mix of people who actually do the craft and people who don't.
Hmm.
And so to have the ability for people who, I mean, back when I started, you would not have found Pokemon themed amigurumi. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
maybe that's a bad thing, because like if you aren't licensed, you should not be selling licensed characters. I want to put that out there.
Yeah.
But and
I
you
didn't
probably have
even
to
think
go through a
about that.
publisher
That's
to
true.
get that, because that's very expensive. But even just like dragon amigurumi or something like that. And now I have a
Yeah.
friend who that's all she does, is that kind of mythological stuff. And I don't think a publisher back when I started would have looked at that and gone, oh yeah, that could be profitable. But because she had the ability to publish on her own and find her people,
Yeah.
that's become very successful for her.
For
So
sure.
it
Yeah.
opens up a much wider creativity space and an
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity for people who are looking for really unique things to find that when
Yeah.
people can self
And there's a
publish.
little bit of everything, isn't there? Like you can find exactly what you're looking for. Like if you have a project in mind, like there's just so many options. Unlike when you buy only when you go from books, it's like you have themes, or like in my book, there's only a couple of like tank tops. But if you want a tank top and all you have is my book, then you have three options. Well, if you go to Ravelry, like you have an infinity of options. And I'm not saying don't buy my book, but you know what I mean.
Yes, yeah, no, books are wonderful, and I worked almost exclusively for books from books for many years, and you can find
Hmm.
all sorts of wonderful published books. But
Yeah.
yeah, if you're a person who really has a wide variety in taste, and likes to like make a hat and make a stuffed animal, make a blanket and make a, you
Yeah,
can
like most of us, I would
search
say.
those out.
Yeah, for sure. Hmm.
I love it. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your business name and how you came up with it?
Yeah, well, it started being off the hook or something like that, and then yeah, that was me for a little while, and then it just didn't feel right. Like it just didn't sit with me. It didn't speak of me. I feel like I wanted my company name to kind of represent me in a way. So that's where Nomad Stitches came from, because I've told you about my nomadic life. Like we've gone everywhere, but I always end up taking my knitting needles and my crochet hooks, and I figured, yeah, like just like I am kind of nomadic, my stitches are also nomadic, like we travel together. And I do love that about my style of life and creating things, because I can probably tell you exactly what I made each one of my garments, and that is just so special to me, because it just adds extra memories to it. It's like I can think like this guy. I started it in Mexico, and I remember working with it with my mom. Like, I asked her for advice, like, how do you think this should be? And it just adds so much meaning to the garment that you have and that you make. So, like, yeah, I just wanted something to speak to that. So that's why Nomad Stitches.
I love that. That's wonderful. Absolutely. I think it definitely speaks to you. Do you feel like the different places you travel, you get inspiration from where you are?
100%. Like, so many of my garments have names or just feels of a place. Like, I have this really colorful one with like little colorful hearts and colorful stripes, and I call it Coyoacan, which is it's a place in Mexico City where it's a beautiful park, and the house is all different colors, and there's loads of ice cream shops. And my dad used to take us there on Sundays to eat ice cream and to listen to the music, because there's always someone playing music or a clown making a show and kids playing football, and just like it's so lively. And when I think of it, this garment just kind of embraces that feeling of like childhood and innocence and fun, just pure fun. And I do that all the time for so many of my garments. Like, I try to make them more significant than just like, oh, it's a commission from a company, like I try to kind of give it a bit more of a feel to it. So yeah, loads of my travels. I remember going to Rome, for example, and I have a top called Trevi, and I remember the Trevi fountain and just like the sense of elegance and, kind of extravagance. So it's like really big lace with like a big cleavage, and it's just like I like to embrace those feelings that I get when I travel and those memories and kind of put them into yarn somehow. And doesn't always work, but a lot of the times it does.
Oh, if that isn't the story of designing.
True.
Okay,
True.
so you said, you living a nomadic life, and you always take your hooks and or knitting needles and crochet hooks with you. And it made me think, as I'm sitting in front of my giant yarn stash, do you keep a yarn stash, or are you one of those amazing people that I envy that picks up something for a specific project and makes it into that project?
Yeah, I used to be that person. I used to be the kind that just buys for a specific project. And then when I started making things to sell, I would overbuy. So I would have stock to make things. So that's when it started. That's when the, the snowball came down and my stash started growing. And now I don't know where to put it. But yeah, but yeah, I used to be very much the kind that buys for a specific project, especially because I never had a lot of money. I mean, I still don't, but like, when you're strapped for cash, it's like you can't just give yourself the luxury to go out and do whatever. So I would actually put lots of thought into it and think about what I want to make and what materials I'm going to use, and then just buy the exact amount. And then I still have some leftover yarn from like who knows how many years ago, whatever project I did, I made that I had leftovers, and I keep everything, which is so bad. But sometimes I'm sure it will be used at some point. But yeah, when I started crocheting, like as more professionally, I wasn't traveling so much. But like those 3 months in Italy, for example, that I did do quite a few. Like I was selling bikinis on Etsy, so I had quite a few orders, and I was doing designs as well. So I did have to take this massive bag with me in the car, which, having such limited space, my husband was not very happy about, but he was like, fine, we'll take your yarn. And like every stop we're like, we have to go to a yarn shop. So yeah, I do try to always take something with me, but yeah, my lifestyle has changed a lot since I was going in just whatever could fit in my backpack. but always hooks and needles just in case.
That's right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your book and like what the inspiration was for that? It's absolutely gorgeous. And I was flipping through it the other day, and there are such beautiful patterns. And I love color. And
Yay.
you put together like really gorgeous color combinations.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, I love color too. That's the thing. I feel like it is one of those things that I've always wanted to be like those people that you see on Instagram that have like really like neutral backgrounds and everything's so white. And I've tried being that person and I'm just not. Like I'm too exuberant for that and my clothes kind of speak to that. And yeah, I just wanted to have fun and they actually contacted me and they're like, do you have an idea for a book, because we like what you do? And that was my first thought, like there is no colorful guide for crochet. Like I've had to learn all of these techniques on my own by reading this blog and that blog and that blog and this book, and it's just always separately. And I remember buying a knitting color workbook that explained all of these techniques in knitting, and I was like, I want to write this. I want to be able to give a person my book and they'll be able to do all of these techniques, especially because I use them in my patterns so much. So like for this guide to exist was important to me. And I don't think the publishers were into the whole like guidebook theme. They wanted to go more like the pattern book theme. And I was like, can we do both? Can we make sure there is a chapter, a long, well explained chapter on each of the techniques, and I will give you the patterns. And they're like, yes, we can make that compromise, and so I was very, very happy to create something that is very helpful and useful, but also fun, and to have projects to make from it.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's a great combination because you're right. Crochet color work is it's a little different than knitting. So, and a lot of people don't do both crafts. So to, just assume that people know how to do that stuff. And I think a lot of people who are, like slowly improving their skills, maybe kind of shy away from that because it looks really complicated. I
Yeah.
actually think color work is easier in crochet than it is in knitting because
Do
you've only
you?
got the one live stitch versus
Yeah.
all the. So that's just a
Yeah.
personal thing. But what a great opportunity for people to learn. And I think I've watched lots of your videos and I have your book. So I think you're a great teacher, and I think you really have a teacher's heart. Like you really want people to grow and learn, and you feel like I think it could be easy to have an attitude of like, I'm going to lock this all into myself and not share, because then what if somebody else does something similar,
Yeah.
or what if somebody else takes my idea? But I feel like you're a really generous spirit of like, here's how I do the things, and come let me teach you these things, even to other designers.
Yeah.
And so to be able then for somebody to pick up the book and have a really deep understanding of the techniques and then gorgeous patterns to apply those and practice those on is really wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, I did want to share that. I did want, because like I said, it took me time and effort to learn all these things. It wasn't like there wasn't this guide before, and hopefully now there is, and people understand colorful techniques in crochet more through it, because I feel like when you say color work in crochet, people always assume tapestry. And it's like there's so many other techniques that you can use and so many variations of tapestry crochet. Like, it's just like you don't want to limit people to the one because that's the one they've only known. So hopefully this is a way of like people opening their horizons and giving different techniques a go. Especially like with mosaic crochet, when I started doing it, I had never seen a garment that used it. I would see is like bags and cushions and things like that, blankets.
Yeah.
And I was like, but this is such a cool technique. Like, why don't you put it in a jumper? And then I did it, and like, it's like, I just love it. I love the idea of incorporating all of these techniques and wearing them. I mean, how cool is that? Like, honestly, people assume that my house is full of crochet stuff, but like I never make house stuff because I can't wear it. And I want to wear these things that I make, I want to like be able to like remember, like think about them all day. And yeah, maybe I should do it for the house because it would help me. But my point is clothes are more fun. But yeah, so hopefully this book helps.
Do you have any tips for people who want to get into making garments that have maybe never made a garment before? Some things they should think about before they just dive in? Because I feel like having made several garments, I thought like, oh, it's more than just like picking up some yarn and a pattern and diving in.
Yeah, I would say start with something for yourself. Don't start designing something because you wanted to make it a business. Like I think that's a great way to like have a goal and be like, this is what I want. But if you start with your first pattern and you grade it for 1,000 sizes and you're like, I'm gonna write this down, then it's like I feel like you're jumping hurdles without really being prepared. And I feel like if you make something for yourself, that you use your measurements, you figure out your gauge, and you give it a go, and then you make it, and you're like, yay, I did it. And then you can go on to like, how can we expand this? Right. But I think that's the biggest thing. I think making something for one person that fits and that looks good and that you're happy with, and then moving on from there. And if like I don't want to sound like I'm trying to sell something, but I'm actually going to be doing a design course in October. So for anyone who's actually interested in learning the design process and like actually doing all the maths and what everything that's involved in, going from an inspiration to a finished garment, like we're going to cover it. And it's not like a 10-minute thing, it's not like you've done it. It takes a while. It's a little bit of work to figure it out, to minimize the amount of mistakes and frogging and all of that, so hopefully that will be helpful. But yeah, I would say to just go for it and make something for themselves first.
If you're a crocheter who wants to make their first garment, do you recommend like a certain style of top, or would you say start with worsted yarn or dive into fingering because it's gonna drape better, or any tips like that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like whoever, if you've ever made one of my patterns, you know that I love fine yarn. But I also know that fine yarn takes a lot longer to complete a pattern with and a project with. And as a beginner, that might feel very defeating, maybe, to not be able to finish something quickly. So I would start with whatever it is that you feel more comfortable with. Like if you've made a garment before, or a scarf or a cushion, and you've worked with DK weight yarn, then stick to that. If you're one of those that loves to do lace with fingering weight yarn, then stick with that. Like, do whatever you feel comfortable with, because garments are at the end larger than a scarf, larger than a pair of mittens, and it will take longer. But you also want to know that you feel comfortable working with that material and, to keep going. But yeah, I always tell people that to think about what their finished product is going to be like. Do you want something that's drapey and light for the summer? Do you want something that's really nice and thick and, kind of sturdy for the winter? Then, choose the yarn accordingly, and the fibers and the hook, and the label is just a suggestion. I feel like I have a few patterns that I've written that I use fingering weight yarn with like a 5mm hook. And that is an unlikely match because they're not, that's quite a big hook for fingering weight yarn, but the stitch called for it. And, I wanted this very dense stitch, but I didn't want the fabric to be dense. So then I used a big hook to keep the fabric light, yet that stitch is still being used. And that is just your decision as the designer, as the maker, as the creator of this. You get to decide that. And that's the best part, I think, of designing garments, that it's just no one gets to tell you this. It's your choice and you get to adapt it however you want to. And that's the fun part.
Yeah. I am a huge advocate of gauge swatching. I know that that's like, I'm like the least popular person in the room when I'm like, but you need to gauge swatch and it's so important and you might be doing it wrong and that's why you think they lie. But I think that's something that people don't think about when they're gauge swatching is you're working so hard to get your stitches to the right size, right? So that whatever you're making ends up the right size, which
Mhm.
is super important. But I always encourage people then to look at the fabric you've made. Because if your stitches match perfectly, but it can stand up on its own and it's supposed to be a summer
Yep.
top,
Yep.
that's probably not what you're going to be happy with in the end.
Yep. 100%. And it doesn't make me angry, but it gets close to that. When people finish something and they're like, yeah, but I just don't really like the color, or I don't really like the way the stitch worked, or I don't really like the drape. And it's like, if you had swatched, you would have noticed that. You would have known that this stitch doesn't work well, or that this fiber isn't the best, and it's just one of those things that you can learn through this swatch, and you don't have to make a whole jumper that you don't like, and it really gets to me.
Yes,
But
because
it's
there are
true.
definitely times that like I've put a project and a yarn together or a stitch pattern and a yarn
And they don't
together and
work.
been surprised at how wonderful they were together. Maybe it was kind of a more textured stitch and a more variegated or speckled yarn. And sometimes those aren't great together because
Hmm.
the quick color changes can kind of muddle the texture. But other times it like
It
they
works.
really go really great together.
Yeah.
And if you don't swatch beforehand, you don't get to see those kinds of things.
No, you don't. It's so true, and it is the same. Just for designers, we have to do it right, because you can't start something without knowing how many stitches you need for to complete it. But I feel like for makers, they think that it's unnecessary. It's just a suggestion, but no, it is really important. And as a as a pre-designer, I'm going to confess that I never swatched. I didn't understand the point of it. I didn't understand what gauge was. I didn't even understand the weight of yarn. I was just like, this feels right. I mean, I was awful, but because I wasn't informed, and because, like I said, I just did whatever I wanted to create, and the patterns that I got were, free ones that didn't really have that much information, maybe, and that were very, how do you say, adaptable kind of thing, and you know. I made things that didn't fit. It's true. But now I've learned, as someone who's creating these things, like the other side and why it's so important, and not just to waste your time, but really to create something that's worthwhile, I think.
Yes, I would say, and I have a feeling you're going to agree with me, that you actually save time by swatching
Yeah.
because you don't end up, I mean, even like, so let's say you're making a sweater and you think, oh, I'm not going to swatch. And you start making your sweater. I mean, if you make the whole yoke of a sweater and then go, I don't like this fabric, or I don't like the way this is looking in this stitch, like that's hundreds and hundreds of stitches.
Yeah.
A
No,
gauge
I know.
swatch would have been so much fewer stitches and so much quicker.
Yeah.
And
No,
you're way
100%.
more likely to have to do less adapting when you know what your
Yeah.
stitches are going to be like.
Yeah, I mean, as a designer, I'm sure you get lots of these emails, but I always get people are like, "Oh, so I want to make this sweater that you have with sport weight yarn with worsted weight yarn. How do I do it?" And I'm like,
You can, but it's complicated.
exactly. I already did the work to give you a pattern with this gauge, and you're asking me to do a lot of work because you just want to use something else. It's like, well, maybe find a pattern that uses your yarn, you know,
Yeah.
or figure out how to do the maths yourself, because like it doesn't work.
Yes. Yeah. Especially garments. And I mean,
Yeah.
other patterns too. Some things you can easily translate into
Oh, totally.
an adjace yarn. Like you can take,
Yeah.
I designed a sport weight shawl
Hmm.
in July. And I was just curious, like I have fingering weight yarn. Lots of people have fingering weight yarn. I feel like in America, at least, it's a little more common than sport weight yarn. So I'm just going to like see what it looks like worked up. And it worked
Okay.
great. Like
Yeah.
anybody that just picked it up and adapted it a little bit. But the sizing and fit that is needed for a top versus a shawl is extremely different.
Yeah.
And the further away you go from the yarn, the more the same thing is going to turn out different. So even if you picked up my pattern and said, I'm on a bulky weight shawl in this pattern, it's going to be pretty different.
Yeah, very different. Yeah. And I feel like there are quite a lot of patterns out there that are adaptable to yarn. And maybe people think that is better or that is easier to use. And I think like some things are called for, like fine, like things that are like very boxy and it's like you're making a square, so make a square with whatever yarn you have that measures this. Fine, that works. But I feel like patterns, in at least the designs that I try to do, are a bit more technical in a way, like have better fit that will actually fit your body, and it's not just a square that you hang on you, which actually does look quite good when you have a square hanging off you, but it's not necessarily the best thing for a garment, and I when people just kind of want to switch and stuff, it's like I put so much time into the maths to make sure that this fit a body, an actual human body. Like I think it's part of the trade-off, isn't it? Like it's like I've put all the work, now you get to put a little bit of the work and then make it, and then make all that work. But like you get something perfect and beautiful and wonderful and that fits, and swatching. I'm a big fan.
Yeah, and there are designers who will have like a heavier weight version and a lighter weight version of the same pattern. And I've had some people say like, well, but it's the same thing. It is not the same.
No, it's not.
You've got your stitches figured out, but it is like starting over on all of those measurements if you're going from like a fingering weight to a worsted weight.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So I love it. All right, I'm going to ask you some of your favorites.
Okay.
Right. What is your favorite item to design?
It's got to be a jumper, a sweater. For sure. Yeah, pullover, give me a round yoke any day.
I love it. Where's your favorite place to work?
My sofa in front of the telly. I know.
I think that's a lot of people's favorite place to work.
Well, it's comfy, ain't it?
It is. What's your favorite yarn to work with? Weight or fiber content, whatever.
I would have to say a superwash merino wool and fingering weight yarn. I think that's a winner every time. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite hook or needle, either size or brand, that you always go back to?
Yeah, I've used I think they're Knit Pros, the ones I have, and I've used that same set. Actually, I didn't even buy the set. I bought the 4mm one, and I've had to buy another one because it got so dirty that every time I did videos, I was so embarrassed to show it. So I bought the same one, but another one that only used for videos. Yeah, my 4mm Knit Pro. I used it so much. It's very nice one.
That's a good hook if you've used it that much.
It is, yeah. And like I know a lot of people like to collect different hooks, and they have like this like huge collection of them. Like I'm not that person. Like I'm much more of a utilitarian kind of person than a having things for fun kind of person. Like my house doesn't have many like cutesy decorations because sometimes I just don't see the point of them, and it's the same with hooks. It's like, why do I buy more if I don't need them? I know I'm so boring. I wish I wasn't because I want them all. But
it makes perfect sense, because if what you value is a nomadic lifestyle where you can pack up your stuff easily and move on, having 800 hooks in the exact same size just because one is purple and one is pink and one is wood and one is metal and one, it doesn't make sense for your lifestyle and what you value.
True. Although to be fair, a few months ago, I think it was We Crochet sent me a huge pack of a whole set of hooks, and I didn't really use them for the longest time. But then I lost one of my hooks, and now I'm like, okay, where are those hooks? Like, I always have them around, because now that I have an extra set, I tend to lose them, apparently, because now that I have extras, they're there. So yeah, I'm really, really glad I have the extra ones. But I use my hooks, yeah, the same one all the time. I try to.
I love it. I love it. What's your favorite thing to drink while you work?
A cup of tea. Yeah. And I'm very English these days, and I drink a cup of tea when I'm sad, when I'm happy, when it's rainy, when I came home, when it's nighttime. Every time of day, I drink a cup of tea.
I love it. I love it. What's your favorite color?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. I really like browns, but I would say a mustardy yellow drives me a bit crazy.
I love it. What's your favorite season?
I used to always say fall, but I think it has to be summer. Now that I don't get the same kind of summer that I used to, yeah, I really, really like summer.
Yeah, yeah. Separate from designing, and I don't know, do you get a lot of time to just make other things other than what you're designing?
Like yarn-wise?
Yeah.
Not much,
No.
to be honest. From time to time, I will make something for my kids just because I feel guilty that I haven't. Uh, or because I want to make it into a pattern and it didn't turn out the way I wanted, so then I don't. But no, not really. Yeah.
Then before you were designing, what was your favorite item to make?
Oh, I was surprisingly really into knitting socks. And yeah, I know. I don't know why, especially because I don't know, it's one of those things that you can't really show, and they always get holes in them, and I never fix them, and it's so sad. And I never wear them because I don't want them to get holes in them, and it takes forever to finish them, but it is so satisfying to knit socks. I really, really like knitting socks, and mittens as well. I got really into mittens for a while. I did a lot of hats as well. Yeah. Actually, before I started designing, I probably made 2 or 3 jumpers. That's it. They're all knitted. I never made a crochet jumper before I designed my first one. Yeah, it's one of those weird things. I made loads of accessories, but yeah, not that many jumpers.
I love it. I love it. Are you a book or a podcast kind of person?
I wish I were a book person, because I love reading, and I used to love reading, but now that I work with my hands so much, I can't read books and crochet at the same time. So I've become a huge podcast person, and especially now that I've been going to the gym since I got back from our holiday, and I find it very like motivating to listen to podcasts while on the treadmill. It never even would have crossed my mind when I was younger. I was always like very heavy hip hop to work out, and now I'm like, oh, Montessori podcast, yes please. It's a bit sad.
I love it. And I find that podcasts help to kind of move the time, because you're kind of like traveling through a story or something that's interesting.
You know what?
While you're moving.
I've never listened to a story podcast though. And that's something that I think I need to do. Like all the ones I listen to are always like interviews or, someone just talking about a topic. Or sounds very boring now that I say it, but I've never actually listened to the whole like true crime thing that people are into, and I feel like I need to try it.
What's a favorite podcast of yours?
At the moment, I'm really into parenting podcast. It's called Unruffled, and it's a gentle parenting kind of person, this parenting guru or whatever. Yeah, I love it. It's helped me a lot with my kids, and I've read all her books. It's Janet Lansbury is the person. I've read all her books, and I think it's kind of changed the way we treat our kids. So and a lot of times I forget how to I remember this kind of style of parenting because it goes against how I grew up and how my husband grew up, this whole gentle parenting and respectful parenting. So yeah, it's very helpful to listen to it. I know it's very, very boring. I'm such a mom.
No, you should be. You are a mom.
I know, but more interesting people would be like, oh, I love about the serial killer, or like, how to build a bike in 5 days, or I don't know.
They're just like patterns. There is a podcast out there for everyone.
True.
There are several.
So true. Several, that's the thing, yeah.
Yeah. Fun. When you get a chance to read, do you prefer a physical book or an audiobook?
Again, I got really into audiobooks when I started crocheting, and actually when I started breastfeeding my kid, because I have a 1-year-old. Well, she's gonna be 1 this month, and just breastfeeding through the night. Audiobooks got me through it. But yeah, I love a physical book. It's just been a very long time since I've had the chance. It's so sad.
Yeah, you're in a tough stage of life for physical books, because I don't know about you, but I also needed at least kind of quiet when I like really read a physical book, or I just sit there and like look at the words but don't actually like absorb
They
any
don't
of
mean
them.
anything. Yeah.
So don't feel bad about that. You're in a great stage of life for audiobooks and podcasts, and it'll come back around. Oh no. Oh, I think Sandra froze. Oh, hopefully she'll come back to us here real quick. Oh, there you are.
There you are. Can you see me? Sorry about that.
I can. That's okay. It happens sometimes. It's fine.
Thank you.
I was just saying you're in a great stage of life for audiobooks and stuff. And as your kids get older, it gets easier to find time.
Yeah.
To get back into actual physical books.
Yeah. I'm hoping for that.
It'll come. Do you prefer to make and or wear a sweater or a cardigan?
I think a sweater. Yeah, a nice pullover for sure. Especially now that the whole cropped look is cool with the high-waisted trousers. Like I feel like teenage Sandra would have loved that, because I always felt like my belly was out, with those really low trousers that were popular in the 90s, and I was just like never able to wear them. So now I'm like, yeah, look at that. My waist is like the smallest part of my body, and that's exactly where my trousers are. Yeah, so I'm all about a crop sweater and high-waisted skirts or trousers.
Yeah, I'm the same. My body shape does not appreciate a low-rise pant.
Oh no.
No.
Especially after 2 kids.
Yeah. Agreed. Do you prefer a salty or a sweet snack?
Oh, definitely sweet. I've got a sweet tooth for sure. Yeah, chocolate all day long.
Me too. Which is your least favorite, swatching or weaving in ends?
Ooh.
Or something else?
I want to say weaving in ends, because that's just the most annoying part, I think. But I also find it slightly meditative, kind of just like finish off. Although this is what happens sometimes. And you know what? That's okay. No one can see it. So yeah, weaving in ends, I think.
I love it. Okay, so you told me before we were on the what you're wearing is a brand new top, something that's coming soon, or is it available?
This is my latest release. No. It was released in August, I think. This is called the Bougainvillea top, and it actually came as a group with 2 other patterns, so you can get the 3 of them as a collection. They're like 3 summery garments. They're crochet, all of them, or you can get it independently as well on my website and Ravelry and whatever. And there's a little video for the embroidery. So if no one's done embroidery and on crochet, hopefully this will help you get through it.
It's so cute. I absolutely love it.
Thank you. Well, sorry, I think the lighting's going away. It's one of those, when you were asking me about inspiration from my traveling and heritage, and like because sorry. Yeah, in Mexico they have these garments called huipiles, which is like this square kind of yoke with loads of
Mhm.
embroidery flowers. I'm sure everyone's seen them. And then like this just loose like tunic, and that's the inspiration behind this one. So you see, it's like it's kind of like really flowy, and it's so much fun to wear, and I love it.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, that is all my questions for you. We've been talking for over an hour.
I
I could go on. I could go on and on. You are just so lovely
I'm
to
not sure how
talk
my
to.
husband would feel about that, but me too.
Yeah, so I need to let you go so that you can spend time with your kids, and you're heading towards dinner time there.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, we
Yeah, so
are.
but thank you for taking the time to spend with me today. It's been so lovely getting to know you better.
Thank you so much. And yeah, for anyone who's listening, if you guys are interested in my stuff, like you can join my newsletter. And I'm always super active. Well, not always super active, but I've started being super active on it. And there are some very fun, exciting things, as like the design course that I was telling you coming up soon. So if you guys want to be informed, that's the way to do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Have a great day. Bye
You
bye.
too. Bye-bye. All right. So down below in the description are links to lots of Sandra's things. There's her book, there's her Ravelry page, there's her Instagram. You should definitely go follow her. Lots of gorgeous pictures there. There's also her website, which I am certain has a place that you can sign up for her newsletter. So please check out the links in the description below. Thank you so much for joining us today. I had so much fun. I hope you did too. I would love it if you would subscribe to my channel. More Meet the Makers and other videos coming very soon. So the best way to get notified about that is to subscribe and turn on notifications. Like this video, share it with a friend who you think would love Sandra. She is so wonderful, and I appreciate her joining me today. Thank you so much again, and happy crafting.